a lot of good things that we dove into. I have up in my featured section on LinkedIn, you can find all of the videos from this series. If you need to go back, you missed something, you want to catch it, it is all there for you on YouTube. But I want to introduce myself really quick for those of you that may be here or watching the rebroadcast and do not know me. I'm Carlisha Bradley. I am the founder and CEO of Amplify for Women. We are a leadership consulting firm that supports women on their journey of career acceleration through public speaking, leadership coaching, and professional branding. We specifically support C-suite leaders and founders through several of our program offerings. One of those is the Elevate cohort, which is launching at the top of the new year. I'll talk to you all a little bit more about that later. But my experience has been very diverse. I've led startup organizations. I'm obviously a founder as well, social impact organizations. I have served on national teams and lead an international nonprofit organization. And as I have grown on my leadership journey, which started in executive leadership at a very young age, I have really seen and harnessed the lived experiences of women who I have sought out as mentors, as coaches, but also my own as a woman leading in the C-suite, as a Black woman, and as a founder. And in this series, my hope and my passion for this talk and for all of these has been to allow for you to realize you are seen, you are heard. I am not just over here talking about the challenges that we face, but how do we move around those to build a brighter future for ourselves, for our communities, for our families? So we're talking about the cost of waiting. And I couldn't get into this conversation without sharing a bit of the backstory of, the why and what was this turning point for me to move past the seat of waiting, which I'm going to talk to you about the two things you have to give up for career acceleration, for clarity, even in your life. But I mentioned in one of the videos, the executive leadership journey for me started very young. I was 27 years old. I remember very vividly, I was working as a public school teacher. I was talking to the executive director of the organization. We were having one of those like end of year conversations. And I was sharing with him what my desired career trajectory was. I knew I wanted to be an executive director. I was sitting here talking to this Caucasian man who essentially in that conversation, he laughed. He laughed at my hope and my dream and my aspiration and told me what that path would have to look like for me. He listed out how many years it was going to take me, how hard it was going to be, what else I needed to do, all of these layers of things to just increase doubt, but almost like it was a joke that I had this aspiration. And it is so funny and fitting in the way that God works, because my career exploded after I left that role and position. And I ended up 3 years later sitting across from him at the table as the executive director of another charter school organization in our city, working with him as my peer. But the snapshot of the praise report of, oh, I went from here to there within these years is not the full story, right? It is amazing, but there was so much to be learned in that journey. And today I want to talk to you about just the cost of waiting. Like, what if I had not made the leap? I applied for a stretch job. When I applied for the position, it was a stretch job. I had not taken the normal route to executive leadership. I had not had the traditional roles. I knew that I had transferable skills. I knew that the work that I had done in the community, the relationships that I had built, the exposure that I had, my background, while my educational background looked different, I knew within me that I could do this. I had the confidence at that point of a mediocre white man, as some people will say, of applying for this job. And I remember telling my family and friends, like, I wanted this job more than anything. I prepared. I was talking to everyone that I could. I showed up at the interview and I gave it my all. And so imagine the opportunity when it was given to me, trusted for me to take this on, because I knew that my supervisor, the black woman who hired me, she was betting on me. I talk about her all the time because Dr. Phyllis Anderson was the gateway to me being the woman that I am. It takes someone who is willing to take a bet on you, who is able to see that there is more behind the scenes, and that there's potential in here to be nurtured. But for her to be able to see that, I had to be willing to put myself out there. I had to be willing to say, this is what I want. This is what I'm going to go after. That cost of waiting, had I chosen to say, you know what, I heard what my old supervisor said of what I needed to do. I need to take these steps. I need to go these places. I need to do these things. That would have been me sitting on the sidelines. I do not know that I would have been on the path that I am, right? But I chose to do it anyways. And that does not mean that after you make the choice to move past this cost of waiting, that it isn't going to be hard. Because once I got into the role, whew, hardest position that I've ever had in my life. I had so many growing pains. And one of the questions that had come in from one of our last videos, a lady asked me, well, how did you develop these executive leadership skills? How did you go from being an individual contributor to having that executive presence? How did you move from where you were to where you are and gain these strategic thinking insights? And to be honest with you, it didn't just come from me figuring it out, because if I was still trying to figure it out and put together the pieces, I'll tell you, I read a lot of books, I Googled a lot of templates, but the only thing that really helped me to go from where I was to where I wanted to be was that I got in proximity to leaders who were already there. I would sit under Dr. Anderson. I'd ask her questions all the time. But one of the greatest gifts that she also gave me was an executive coach. I was going back through Facebook memories the other day, and I saw some of the posts that I made about when I would leave these coaching sessions with my coach, and the ways that it wasn't that my coach was giving me the answers, because that's not what coaching is. It is allowing for you to be asked the right questions to pull out of you what already exists. My confidence exploded after those sessions when I was able to piece together and to really be able to have the time to step back and think at a higher level. It is not that you do not have what it takes to lead and to go beyond being an individual contributor. It is not that you are not the right founder to move from scaling from just a solopreneur into growing a team. That's not true. The fact of the matter is that you need exposure to those opportunities to lead through layers, to influence. You need to be cultivated with a framework and with the questions that will allow for you to get on the balcony. A lot of times we're just so deep in the weeds. And those experiences nurtured my ability to grow in executive leadership. But as I got into this journey of executive leadership and started to be in the roles and got really embedded into the work, especially in working in public education, there is nothing like the intensity of working in a role where children's lives are depending on the decisions that you make. Shout out to all of my educators out there. The work is not easy. And I first just want to say thank you. So as my journey started as, a teacher, an administrator, then on to being a charter school executive director, I continued to grow the organization that I was working with, merged off, created another charter network. I got into different fellowship experiences that provided me with exposure, a lot of group coaching experiences for me on my journey, executive coaching. I have not been without a coach in the past decade. Coaching has been an essential staple as a part of this journey. But as I continue to grow in my career, that cost of waiting that I mentioned, that I, skipped past in the beginning, I put myself out there, I made the risk, I applied for the job. That cost of waiting became really real later on in my career as I got into different roles that required more of me, what I would say, what I would post, thinking about the ways that I represented the organization. I began to become a part of, um, had more of not necessarily strings attached to it, but the consequences of how I showed up would definitely impact the work that I was leading. And to be honest with you, now that I think about it even more, it could have been more of the story that I was telling myself, especially as a Black woman in leadership. We think that the higher that we get into the careers, the more we feel free and able to show up authentically. But that wasn't the truth for me. I had to make a conscious decision in July of 2020. I can tell you the time. I remember the meetings that I was in. I remember when I was ready to take off the mask. I had continued to wait throughout my career. It was almost like I felt like I was saving up chips of social capital to be able to show up as myself. And I 10 out of 10 do not recommend. Okay. A lot of us think that I have to get to a certain point before I'm able to put my thoughts out there, to be able to package the things that I really want to do. And in this next chapter of my career, I have, I mentioned to you, I was a executive director, charter superintendent. I went on to lead a collective impact organization. I then was a part of the Oklahoma State Board of Education, overseeing public instruction for 700,000 students within the state of Oklahoma. And sitting in this public office taught me a lot about my voice, my advocacy, my yes, and my no. And it pushed me to begin to stop waiting, stop saving up the chips. What are you waiting for? When we have seats at the table, when you have a platform, when you have the thoughts and the ideas, what are you waiting for? And a lot of that was baked into this fear. My fears and some of your fears may be, what will everyone think of what I have to say? Are my thoughts, are my ideas valid? Is this something that people even care about? For some of us, our excuses could be, I have too much on my plate to get involved with that right now. My kids are my focus and my priority. But really, a lot of our excuses are baked in that fear, this fear of failure, this fear of elevating our voices to say something, to do something, to put ourselves in the spotlight. And when I was serving on the State Board of Education, there was a bill that came up across the nation around critical race theory and race and discussions in classrooms. I was the only Black woman on the State Board of Education. Those roles are appointed by the governor. And I knew me choosing to say something, I could lose my seat. I could not be sitting on that board anymore. And even with that thought, it was that fear of, okay, what do I say at this meeting? Even knowing that, should I vote this down? It doesn't matter. The rest of the people are voting yes. But the cost of waiting, the cost of saying nothing was too high for me. Not even in the sense of this is going to, change the trajectory of the vote, but there's a piece of your peace, your core, your authenticity. A lot of you have been sitting in roles, rooms, and positions where you've been just wearing masks of layers of who everyone else thought you should be, speaking in the ways that everyone else thought that you should talk, and you have lost your peace. You have lost your resolve to show up as yourself. I remember for many years, I sat in that board seat and I would be more quiet and tone back because I was wondering, like, do I know what to say? Or if I say things this way and this goes on the record, will it be interpreted in this way? I was in my head. I spent so much time in my head, not realizing that and not owning that I was the only person on this board with lived experience of being in these classrooms, of submitting the reports that we're reviewing, of leading at the levels that were required to truly be qualified for this role. Once I began to sit with the confidence of what I brought to the table and understanding and being more deeply connected to my values, that was the moment that I said, I can't be silent. I cannot be silent. The steps that I began to take, the voice and the ways in which I elevated in those moments began to become a driving force and a momentum in me creating this space with Amplify for Women. To be honest with you, Amplify for Women was birthed from a place of pain and power. The space of pain of sitting at the table and being the only and looking around to my right and to my left, and it's me, but also this space of power and understanding how much I had to bring to the table and the power of my voice and wanting for other women to unlock theirs. Now, eventually, I was removed from the State Board of Education. You can Google my name, and plenty of articles will come up about my time of elevating my voice, what was said, all the way from the Washington Post to our local newspaper, the New York Post. There's a lot that's out there about my time on the Board of Education. And you'll notice a lot of my amplification of my ideas, thoughts, and opinions began in 2020. But even though I was eventually, let go from this position actually in January of 2023, it is one of the most proud moments that I can look back on and tell my children that I knew where my values stood. I knew in that moment what it meant to elevate my voice. And so many of the emails and the outpouring from others who were like, this just gave me the courage to speak up on a local level, on a state level. This gave me the confidence to bring myself to the seat. We just never know who is watching as we are waiting and waiting for the pieces to come together. And so I wanted to share those little bits from my own personal journey of what it took for me to move from waiting, an example of when I didn't wait, I moved on it, but also an example of the times where I spent a lot of my career waiting for the opportunity to speak up. I wish I had done it sooner. I think that everything was purposeful how it played out, but I have committed myself. Even when I was leaving the board, I did an interview with the Black Wall Street Times, and I was asked, well, what's next for Carlisha? What are you doing next in this next chapter? And my answer was, this next chapter is me creating more space and being the cheerleader in the background to bring more women into these seats and positions, to make decisions, to elevate their voices, and to support them on that journey. And that's what I'm doing. Women Empowering Nations does this work for young women ages 16 to 24, supporting them on their leadership path. If you have a daughter or a young woman in your life, I would encourage her to check it out. But Amplify for Women is a special place for women who are founders and C-suite leaders who are looking to grow their career, their brand, their storytelling, and public speaking abilities through our supports. So as I get back to a couple of the points, there's the cost of waiting. You have to give up these two things to get you to that space of clarity, to get you to that space of making the next move. The two things that you have to give up, number one, is comfort. You have to give up comfort. And that's pretty much a simple one of what you have to give up in terms of us sitting in our comfort zone, us wanting to play safe, us wanting to be able to, have the relationships that we have right now and not jeopardize anything. A lot of times it requires for us to give up comfort. It requires for us to have the courageous conversations. It requires for us to be able to say, hey, I'm going to set this boundary. These are the ways in which this environment or this situation is causing discomfort. It requires for you to give up the comfort of saying, I'm worried about putting this out there on LinkedIn or sharing my story or applying to be able to speak at this space because I'm worried about what everyone else is going to say. It's going to be uncomfortable. Okay. I know that there's a lot of you who have gone to conferences. You're already at the conference And you're sitting there, you listen to the sessions and you're like, I could have done that. I had so much more to say. That's it. I don't know how many times I have seen women say, I went to this event and I realized like I could have done that. You could have, but you were waiting. And when the call for speakers came, you felt like you weren't an expert and you didn't apply. You didn't feel like you had anything to say. And that cost of waiting means you're going to wait till the next year. And you may decide you want to have something to say or not, but you need to stop waiting. You have to release that ability to be comfortable to go to the next level. The second thing that you have to release to accelerate in your career and to gain clarity for what's next is control. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee on this one because control. And I'll talk a little bit about what that means specifically for founders is control. When we are at a point where we're wanting our businesses to grow to the next level and we are wanting for even as a leader, a C-suite leader, for your organization to grow to the next level, we have to release control, meaning you've got to become better at delegating. You've got to get to the space where you are giving your team the autonomy to be able to lead in the ways that they need to drive results. If you are wanting to go faster and to go further, you've got to go with other people. And that requires for you to relinquish control. So for one, we've got to let go of comfort. Secondly, we've got to let go of control so that we can gain clarity. In this space of understanding what you're going to have to give up and knowing that you're about to have to make a risk and to make a move, I strongly encourage for you to be in community with other folks who are doing the same, in community with people who have gotten to where you want to go. Community has been an essential ingredient in me finding the courage to move past those places of fear and to relinquish the cost of waiting. The cost of waiting, of course, is peace at times. It is satisfaction, fulfillment. It is purpose alignment. There's also a very real financial cost to that. The cost of you not choosing to elevate your voice, to speak publicly, to put your thought leadership out there. There's a financial cost of the speaking engagements, the promotion for founders, the funding from pitches for you wanting to spend all that time at the whiteboard and not elevate your voice and your business and your concept and ideas. There is a cost to waiting. And I encourage you today, as we go into this holiday season, for one, I encourage you to unplug and take the time to spend some time with yourself. Spend some time with yourself. Determine the costs that you have been incurring over this year, the last year, all of the years combined. What are you willing to cash in on in 2024? Where are you going to play big in this new year? Where are you going to elevate your voice, your expertise, your lived experience, your thought leadership? Where are you going to put it all out there and grow? Growing in the ways in which you tackle the work that you're doing currently, the big ideas and the dreams that you have. It is time to press play. It's time to press play. And I'd love to support you in your journey of going forward and stopping the wait. Our Elevate program is a signature program for Black women founders and C-suite leaders to rise faster in their careers through paid public speaking and also through Amplify for Women, introducing you to concepts of how you can influence and lead through layers, becoming an influential leader through compelling values-based communication. I walk you through a 10-week curriculum and framework that allows for you to explore our signature 4P framework for public speaking, for communication, and for building relationships with your team. And you'll have access to 6 months of the curriculum and to group coaching calls with me. So live support on your journey after you're implementing the curriculum, going out there, stepping on stages, speaking live. You will have me as a resource on your journey for half of the year to walk you through playing bigger in 2024. Now, applications are closing soon, so I encourage you to get yours in. You can DM me the word Elevate or comment below. There's also going to be a link once I finish this video so that you can learn more about the program. I just encourage you in this season, as we're closing out 2023, to just sit with yourself, asking these questions, asking yourself, where have I been waiting on my journey? What is the cost of that wait? And what is the world missing out on because I have not chosen to play big? I hope that you all have enjoyed this series. Please go back, check out the other videos, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Have a great day.